there was nothing there. There was no life. It just was like piercing black eyes, just staring through you. Like there was nothing there except hatred. It was very scary. It was scary.
These are common tactics. You're not crazy. You're imagining it. And we're destigmatizing it by talking about it and saying it out loud.
Carissa Bost. I'm a single mom to a boy and girl, and I was married to a narcissist for a decade, and I had known him for like 20 years. So the whole cycle of abuse was happening for the whole 10 years we were married, and I had no idea. And when I gave birth to my daughter, that's when things started not making sense, and I started wondering what was going on. And I learned about narcissism, and I'm like, oh my God, it all makes sense. And I finally got the courage to leave. What happened to me was something called reverse discarding.
Okay.
He treated me almost like inhumane, and would look at me with these black eyes and like full on hatred. Like he hated my guts, and I didn't understand what was going on. And he pushed me so far out the door, and I finally said enough is enough. But then I was the bad guy because I'm the one that left. So that was like a whole nother level of people asking like, well, why did you leave? Like he basically pushed me out.
In my case, with my narcissistic ex, he did not do that to me. I finally left. It's way too late, but I finally left. But I didn't really know about narcissism at all until this happened to me. But when he was married once before me, and he basically did that to his first wife. He made conditions unbearable. So she left him. And then he was always able to say, she broke up the family. She left. And he told me about this when we first started dating. He's like, I didn't want to, he kind of bits and pieces. And now it's clicking. Oh, that's what you did to her. You made her life so miserable that she left you. And then you were able to say, you didn't break up the family. You're not the problem here. And he even said those words almost exactly to me. But again, it was kind of like pieced together. I found this out over our 5 years together. And then now it finally clicks. That's what he did to her.
He had to play the victim.
Yes.
And it also, I'm sure that probably helped you empathize, like, oh my gosh, his wife left him. Like that helped reel you in. It just is a continuous cycle.
Exactly. Because what happened was his wife left him for a woman. And then he acted like he was, so supportive of her and so supportive of gay relationships, which I'm very supportive of that. And so I was like, oh, this is a great man that his wife left him for a woman and to be her authentic self. And he's so supportive of her. So, he's just this wronged man that has taken the high road and supported her relationship. And then bits by bits, it came out about how he was cheating on her, how he was cold toward her, how he was emotionally abused, he gave her the cold shoulder. He disconnected from her. He was, doing all these things to force her basically into, I would imagine, a state of almost depression and then to leave him. Yeah.
It's a terrible place to be in. And then it makes you question, like, what am I doing? Did I really do something to cause them to treat me so poorly? Like, did I hurt him so badly that he's punishing me? You don't want to make anyone feel like that.
Yes. The victims all often think that they're the problem because they're not. I don't know about your experience, but mine was, he wasn't consistently evil. It would be nice, the love bombing, the hoovering phase, and then the discard, rude, mean, abusive, and then kind of, it never gets as good as it was at the beginning of the relationship, but it goes better. Exactly. And then you're hanging on to that hope that it's going to be better, or how it was at the beginning when they were love bombing you.
Yes.
And you try to think, well, maybe it's something I'm doing that's causing them to treat me this way. And you look internally instead of realizing what is actually going on here.
Yeah. I used to think in my head, I would think all of these things, and now I have words for them. But years ago, I would think I'm hanging on to these little tiny moments. Like that's the only thing that I'm holding on to. And that's what's keeping me in this. It was so when it was so good, it was so good, but it would be so good for a tiny amount of time. And then it would be hell forever, you know, until the next time.
Like I said, whenever I watch your videos, it's like,
Yeah.
that's exactly what I experienced. Like whenever you've been in it, you know, like, yeah. And I didn't have words for it either. And that was sort of part of, I think, what you're doing and what I'm trying to do is to give people who are either in this or coming out of it words and frameworks to make sense of their experience so they know they're not alone and they're not crazy.
No.
This is really what's going on. And there are even words and definitions for this. So you even did a video on hoovering.
Mm-hmm.
So would you mind explaining a little bit about what that is and maybe how it played out in your relationship?
Hoovering is when you, like, if you finally get the courage to leave or you're finally standing your ground and the person just needs to bring you back in to make sure that they still have control over you. So they'll do all the love bombing. They'll do whatever they can to see if they can reel you back in. And that is what people just jump right back into. They just fall for the same old patterns.
Yes. Yes. And that happened in my relationship. We were about 4 years in and I had had enough and I had left him. I had found a nice man that I was very much interested in. And that's when he hoovered me. So I really want to be with you. I'm sorry for how I acted. Let's buy a house together. Let's get married. Let's blend our families. And it was sort of what I'd always wanted.
Yeah.
And he knew that.
Exactly.
So he hoovered me back in. And I fell for it because that is what you want. You love this person. You love this person, right? And I remember, you know, even my gut feeling at that time, I remember crying on my bed thinking, this is the most important decision I'll ever make my entire life. And I know I'm making the wrong one, but I want to do this.
Yeah.
Like, so my gut was telling me, this is not the right person. You shouldn't be doing this. But I just wanted that so bad, like an addiction, like, because a trauma bond is like an addiction.
It's 100% addiction. And the body keeps the score. Like your body you knew, and you went against it. I did that so many times. Like I remember voices that were not my own voices, and I'm not schizophrenic, but there would be voices screaming at me like, Carissa, get out. And I didn't do it. And I lived with that for a long time. Like, why didn't I just listen? Like that, why didn't I listen?
And you were probably trauma bonded. And so like an addiction, you know, this is like similar to a drug addict. This is a harmful substance and I keep going back to it because I want it, even though my rational mind knows this is hurting you. This is harming you. You know, this isn't good for you.
It messes with your cortisol levels. It messes with everything. It's all brain chemistry. It messes with everything.
Yeah. I've even had people come on the show that said that whenever they do actual scans of the brain, there are physical changes to the brain when you're trauma bonded to someone. It's real. It's not. It's real. It is physically visible.
It is. It is. I mean, even like I would eat my feelings because I couldn't talk to him. Like I resorted to food, and over my divorce process, I lost like 100 pounds and I finally looked like myself again. But I look back at pictures and I'm like, I don't know who that person was. And she didn't know who that girl was either. Like I couldn't talk to him. If something good would happen, he wouldn't be there for me. So I would eat, and I was ashamed of our relationship, so I wouldn't tell anyone else about it. So if something bad happened to him or with us, I would eat. It was my way of coping.
I'm sort of the reverse. When I'm a little chubby, I'm happy because when I am stressed, I can't eat. So my body does the opposite. Like I know people, you know, you eat. I don't eat. And so when I look back at pictures of me, I was very, very, very thin. And now I'm a little bit, you know, chubbier than I'd like to be, but it's because I feel stable and healthy and happy and I can enjoy food. So yeah. So you also did a video. I just love your videos. So I'm going to just keep referring to them here. Reactive abuse. And I've written blogs on that and how it played out in my relationship. Would you mind describing it? And then if you have any, you know, personal stories of that?
Yeah. Reactive abuse is when they do something to hurt you and like purposely to hurt you, and you find out about that and you talk to them and they have to flip it and make you the crazy one, and you like actually feel like the crazy one. And like you might be physical, you might be like raising your voice like you never have in your life. And then they can actually look at you and be like, you're crazy. Like, look at what you're doing.
They push you to your limit and then you act out of character because it's basically a defense of just being, attacked. And then that's normally when the narcissist will either pick up their phone and start recording your reaction, or they'll just use that to further mess with you, tell people, that's when the she's crazy stuff comes out.
Yeah, they'll use that again. They can do whatever they want, but if you do one thing that's out of character, they will use that against you forever.
And it'll become a part of their smear campaign whenever, if you get to that point. Did you endorse a smear campaign?
To my knowledge, I didn't. If I did, I don't really care. It took me a while to come to terms with, like, if that was happening, to be okay with it. But it's like, people should know me well enough to know that I'm not a monster. And if they think otherwise, then they don't know me, and I don't need that in my life.
That's absolutely true. I've often said it's because I did endorse a smear campaign, and it had to do with reactive abuse. Whenever he went nuts and assaulted me, the last time he assaulted me, he actually went to jail. I did react, and I broke stuff, and he recorded that. I don't think I've ever broken a thing in, like, before or since in my life. It's not like that. But he was so abused. He was harming me. He was smashing all my equipment, my iPad, my phone, taking the cord to my computer so I had no way of contacting anyone, and then assaulting me. And I did react. I was like, "You're ruining our family." I broke pictures. He recorded that, and then he used that for the smear campaign. But I've often said what you've said. If people believe that, I don't need you in my life.
Yep, that's on them.
Your opinion of me is none of my business, but I'm glad to know that you're not a trustworthy person to have in my life.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like a big, like, radical acceptance is a big thing that I've learned about. And you just have to accept it is what it is. Like, things happened because they happened. You don't have to think about, like, why. It just is what it is. And you have to figure out a way to move forward and accept that.
I love that radical acceptance. It is what it is. It's outside of your sphere of control. You have to look at it in the face and move forward. I love that. So you also talk about cognitive dissonance. Do you mind describing that? And then if you have any examples?
Yeah, that's cognitive dissonance is when your gut knows something and your brain deep down knows something, and you ignore that. Yes. Because you want to think the best of someone. And that's rough, because that's what people live with. I think everyone who's in a narcissistic relationship knows that it's not right, but they just can't get out of it, and they're just trying to justify. And I remember when I was engaged, it was before we got married, and we were sitting on a hill somewhere, and we were talking about our wedding, and he just lost his mind on me. And I literally just thought with, like, every fiber, like, you gotta go. And I didn't go. And that just stayed the whole 10 years that kept happening. Something would happen, and then you give the benefit of the doubt, even though your body knows that it's not right. You're just not listening.
No, yeah, that's so true. And often, because they do this intermittent reinforcement, you're faced with two sets of data that don't compute to the same thing. Like, there's this nice person that's great and seems to value me, sort of, and is doing and saying the right things to me. And then there's this monster in there. There's, that is no good and is harming me and is bad for me. And it's like Jekyll and Hyde. And when your brain is confronted with these two mutually exclusive pieces of information, you don't really know how to make sense of it. You try, but you don't. And then you're right. Your body kind of knows, your mind knows, but you still want to be with that person. You want to think that good person is the real person, and they're not.
They're not. You become addicted to the unknown. You become addicted to the roller coaster of it.
It's extreme highs, extreme lows, and you just are looking for that next high, just like an addict. It's an addiction. Yeah. I love it. So you also mentioned that sometimes, or oftentimes, people experience resentment. The victim will experience resentment.
Yeah, with yourself. Because I dealt with anger a long time with myself once I got out, and I was thinking, like, how could I be so stupid? Like, how could I have fallen for all of these things that you so clearly see now? How, like, all of these lies that were, like, insane. I mean, like, out of this world. Like, why would I believe that stuff? And why would you let this person have control of your finances, or like allow them to isolate you and take you somewhere where you didn't know anyone? Why would you allow that? That takes a long time to work through and to forgive yourself.
At least for me, I had to learn how to trust myself again. Like, yes, I've lost trust in others, but maybe and I even said this, the worst thing I think he's did to me is make me not trust myself.
Yeah, you don't know how to trust your decision making, your like the people you're picking for your future. You don't trust yourself. Yeah, you have to rebuild a relationship with yourself and learn to love yourself and build from the ground up.
When you said he isolated you and took you away from everyone you knew, that sounds, I don't know if you watched the Gabby Petito documentary.
I haven't yet, but I need to.
You need to. I did a whole series on that. But that was one thing that her boyfriend and murderer eventually did, is he took her away from her family in New York and isolated her in Florida where she had no support system. Did something like that happen to you?
Yeah, my ex was in the military. So he was deployed, and then he took me to Rome to propose. So that was love bombing. And then shortly after we got married, I moved up to upstate New York with him.
And that's not where you're from. You're not, your friends and family are not in upstate New York.
No.
Okay. No, I get that. Yeah. So there is, I'm actually ex-military, but the rates of abuse in the military and also in police or criminal justice circles are extremely high. There are a lot of abusive people in the military, and there's a lot of coercive control. There's a lot of even narcissism.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, you have a bunch of egotistical children. I mean, usually they're 18 when they join. They don't know, and they probably are. A lot of them probably are narcissists.
Yes, yeah. It's a self-selection process of who goes into not that everybody that goes in the military. I had the best friends I'll ever have that I'm still lifelong friends with. It's not everybody, but there's just a high percentage, people with these sort of cluster B personality disorders in general, narcissism in particular, tend to go into certain professions. And I would say military is one, and I would also say law enforcement, police is another one.
Yeah.
So he love bombs you, takes you to Rome to propose. I mean, that has to be magical, right? And then isolates you from your family so he can better control you.
And that was right. That was shortly, a month after we got married, I moved up there. But I remember thinking, I feel like I married a stranger. I was a kid when I got married. I was 21, but I had known him since I was 12. And so I thought that I knew the ins and outs of this person. And I move up there and I'm like, oh my God, who is this person? And I think what made me stay for such a long time was the fact that I had known him for so long. And so I felt well, of course I know him. He's just going through a really hard time. He got back from deployment. They do go through a hard time. They see terrible things, but I'm not the punching bag of that. There were addictions that I didn't know about. There was a lot of abusive situations. I married a stranger.
What kind of addictions, if you don't mind talking about it? Was it alcohol addictions?
Alcohol's always been an issue, and opiates.
That doesn't surprise me either. I dealt with alcohol. Not me. I was not an alcoholic, but my ex with narcissistic traits was an alcoholic, and just so much lies and hiding and promising to quit drinking and then lying about drinking and, all kind of harmful behaviors that are abusive that they really try to keep from you. They do.
They really do. And then, if you find out about it and you talk to them about it, I remember the one night I found 13 bottles of the little Fireball shots, and I mentioned it. I was upset because I had thought he was sober at that point. But of course, I was the bad guy yes, it was on me.
So they often use Darvo. Have you heard of Darvo?
Yes.
So when they will deny or deflect, and then they attack you for bringing it up, and then they reverse the victim and offender. So you end up apologizing to them half the time whenever it's
exactly.
Wait, how did that happen? How am I the bad guy because I brought this up?
The audacity of us. How could we?
How could we? Exactly. How could we? And I've talked about this example too, but one time I caught him drinking and he's like, I just had non-alcoholic beer, and he was so insistent on this, and so it was non-alcoholic beer. How could you have accused me of this? How could you not trust me? I felt like shit. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But in the back of my head, I was like, I don't know about that. And I called up the place where he was at that night and said, do you serve non-alcoholic beer? And they're like, we don't even serve non-alcoholic beer. And I'm like, so you convinced me that I was crazy imagining this alcohol that you had been drinking, brought me to the point where I'm apologizing to you, giving me the silent treatment because how dare I not trust you, only to find out you were lying to my face the entire time.
It's so standard. It's really weird, like how it's all such a pattern. Like it's all so predictable, you know?
But when you're in it,
you don't see it.
Because it's gradual, you don't see it.
Yeah.
Right? You don't see it. And the outside world doesn't always see it either, depending on what type of narcissist they are, because they're not abusive to everybody. They're not a jerk to everybody. They often treat people, they put on their mask and they they can even present very well to the outside world. They're often in prestigious positions and stuff like that.
Right. Politicians. Yeah. People high up.
I was listening to Dr. Ramani, and she said, if you would read a book on how to be an effective tech CEO in the tech realm and how to be a narcissist, it would be the same book. So they're not, necessarily narcissistic they are narcissistic to everybody in some way, but they're very good at hiding it. I think that's kind of how it is. And so the outside world doesn't always see it. And then when a victim finally comes out, they don't necessarily believe the victim because that's not the side of the narcissist they see.
Yeah. Yep. You're right.
You also did a video that I love, and it's about karma and how we might not get they might not, as you say, stub their toe 9 times in a day. We might not get that kind of karma, but we might get it different. So could you explain that a little bit?
They hate themselves. Like narcissism is so deeply rooted in shame, and they can't allow themselves to feel that. And that would be a really crappy way to live your life. So you always want like terrible things to happen. The things that they've put you through, you probably want to do that to them, if not worse.
Sure, you're human.
Just knowing that like they don't like themselves. They don't have the capacity to like or accept or love themselves or really like feel anything real. That would be a really terrible way to live.
They don't have a good life. They don't. They might present as being happy and having a good life and being grand and bigger than life and living large, but deep down, they're miserable people. And you said that it's rooted in shame. And that's something I just recently learned from actually doing this podcast and having the, PhD psychiatrist, psychologist come on and explain that. You're right. What they're feeling inside is intense shame.
And I feel like, I could be off base with this, but I feel like they latch on to what they want. They latch on to the things that they want to be, and then they bring it down with them. Yeah. So they'll also often get with someone like that is very empathetic and kind and nice, and then they just try to destroy that. I don't know if they intentionally try to destroy it or just by virtue of them not having those characteristics that the person is brought down. I compare, like, my ex is with someone else that he found while I was pregnant with our daughter, and she lived in Chicago, and she's young. She was the same age that I was when we got married, and the similarities are just crazy because now they live together. So now he took her away from her family and friends out there, and it's the same thing. And part of me, like, in a way, because they've now lived together for a year, and part of me wants to almost reach out and say, like, if you need someone to talk to, I'm here, because you're going to feel like you don't have anyone and you don't want to talk to anyone about what's going on, No,
he within a week of us breaking up, maybe 2 weeks, he moved someone into his house with him. And I think they're still together. I have no idea actually if they're still together or not, but I have thought about, should I reach out to her? My thought on that is that she's probably like I was, she's getting love bombed and she's in this intermittent reinforcement. He's, I'm sure, told her I'm crazy, vindictive, jealous, all these things. I don't think it would do much good, but a part of me wants to say, hey, I know that you probably have heard awful, horrible things about me. I'm not trying to change your mind on that. But if you need somebody,
yes,
I'm here. If you want to watch my videos, you might find them helpful.
Yeah, just on a human level. No one deserves to go through it. No one.
No one deserves to go through it. No one. And it's interesting who he chose as his next partner. She is nothing like me, so it's not similar to what your experience. But whenever he was writing to me in emails right after we broke up and he found her, and the things he said were just shocking to me. Things like, she thinks that I hung the moon. She thinks that I treat her like a princess. She feels inferior because I have a PhD and she has no education. Like, he's telling me these things about her, and this is what he likes about her, is that she's basically feels inferior to him and is sort of like power. Yeah, it's all about power. It wasn't like she's a great person. We do this. We have so much fun together. We're so compatible. This is all the ways that, he said that she called him Carl Drogo, like the Game of Thrones, like this sexual god, sort of thing.
How long did you know that it wasn't right before you got out?
I probably knew after maybe the first year of us being together that something was not right. And it just got more and more and more obvious the longer it went. But I let it get very, very far to like domestic violence before I actually made a move. And I'm not proud of myself for that, but I was trauma bonded.
Right. Did you have resentment with yourself?
Oh gosh, yes. I had so much resentment for myself. That's why that video just really clicked with me, your video on that, because I had to learn to forgive myself.
It takes a lot of work, and it takes work to understand why, like, what made you choose them in the first place, because that's also something that's like deeply rooted in us that we might not know. And it's easy to repeat patterns and just like get out of a relationship with one and into another relationship with another one, and the same person in a different body.
Exactly. Like, I had someone on the show that said the same asshole in a different suit. Like that's exactly so what it is. And when I found, and I don't think this is the complete picture, but I think it's definitely part of it, is I am a people pleaser, trying not to be. I am an empath, and I have an insecure attachment style. So I think all of those things made me more likely to get into this sort of relationship, and it makes me more likely to get into another one.
Yeah. They're magnets to that. It's like a magnetic thing.
Yeah. I did an interview with someone who specializes in pathological love relationships. And that is one of the key, there are like 4 things that have to be present for this to be classified as a pathological love relationship. But the main thing, the common denominator, is the victim and their personality traits. And these personality traits aren't necessarily bad. And in some ways, they make you very successful and are good things. Like, you're very loyal, you're faithful, you try to see both sides of things, you're empathetic, you are honest. And so you think other people are honest. And so they're not necessarily bad traits, but they're things that someone with narcissism will just latch on to.
It makes sense. They love empaths.
Are you an empath?
Yeah. It's a great thing, but it sometimes stinks.
Yes. In many facets of life, it's a wonderful thing to be empathetic and be able to feel how other people might feel or see the other side of the story, but they will just take advantage of that.
I'm setting up myself now. I'm getting my life together post-divorce for me and the kids. So we live back at home with my parents, and I'm putting myself through nursing school. So I'm glad that I can use my empathy with someone that's not taking advantage of me and be putting it forward in a positive way,
Mother and nurse would definitely, I am a mother as well. I'm not a nurse, but to have empathetic nurse, to be empathetic and go into nursing is wonderful because we really need more healthcare professionals that are empathetic.
Yeah.
And the nurses are the closest people to the patients. So I think that's wonderful. And I'm really happy to hear that you now have your support system back. You're focusing on your kids. This is kind of what I did as well. I got my support system back. I was estranged from my parents when I was with them. I wasn't even talking to them. I got my support system back. I focused on my kids and I focused on my career. And that's about rebuilding me.
You got to prioritize yourself for the first time because you teach yourself and allow yourself to prioritize someone else's well-being before your own.
Exactly. So do you have to co-parent with him?
It's tough. I'm navigating that right now. It's so nice I actually got a text the other week from him, and for the first time my bones didn't shake. And it was so amazing. And just from my innate response from that, I was like, oh my God, I've come so far. There's no threat. There's nothing that this person could do that will make me scared. There's nothing. Good luck, dude.
He has no power over you anymore.
And even though I knew for a long time he hasn't had the power, I think in a sense, I just was so used to my bodily reactions. I would literally just shake. My insides would shake anytime his name popped up. I'm like, oh no. And I would get a sense of dread.
Well, like you said, the body keeps the score. So even whenever you're, in your mind, you know that you're safe and he has no control over you, your body is still reacting how it always reacted.
And I think a lot, some of that would be when we were together. If I was with the kids somewhere, even at my parents' house, and he knew that we were there and he called and I didn't have my phone with me and I wouldn't pick up, I would face the wrath of that when I got home. So it was constant. So if I'm not answering you, I'm in trouble. So I feel like that was kind of getting over that too. That stuck with me for a long time.
If you don't answer your phone or respond to a text immediately, it's just
but they can take forever. The similarities are wild. The more stories that you hear, you're like, wow, it's the same exact stuff that happens.
I even said whenever I was first started my blog and my Facebook page, which is where I mostly have my social media through, is there some playbook that they all read on how to be a narcissist? Because it's so consistent.
Yes.
And one person responded, which made sense to me. I don't know if this is true. They said, well, since it's such a clearly defined mental health condition, that there are specific patterns that they all follow. That is, part of the condition is they do these very specific things.
That would be an interesting thing to actually read, read the DSM-5 criteria on that and see.
I had someone come on and read it. And, I think it's pretty common. The thought within the community is that narcissism is so underdiagnosed because they don't think there's a problem with them. So they don't seek help. Yes. And even if they do seek help, they are so good at what they do. They can fool many mental health care professionals.
Or even if they're diagnosed, they're like, no, I'm not, they will not face the reality of that.
And then, whenever it comes to personality disorders, it's not like you can take medicine and get fixed. I think cognitive behavioral therapy is sort of what they try to do, but it's just part of their personality. It's who they are.
I learned actually very recently that if you approach a narcissist and tell them that they are one, that's the worst thing that you can do. Yes. And I remember the night that my two friends told me about it and I was starting to wrap my head around it. It was still brand new and I didn't know. And he and I were just arguing in the kitchen and I said in the nicest way, I think you're a narcissist. Yeah. Looking back and oh my God, Carissa, why? But he lost it on me. He's like, I'm not a narcissist. You're a narcissist. And I was like,
you're a narcissist. What? Yes.
And I took days and I'm Googling, am I, how do I know if I am? And now I'm oh my God, just the simple thought that I had, that I questioned, am I? That means that I'm not,
Yes. Yeah. I same thing happened to me. I mean, it's we're telling the same story. I did say to him, I think you're a narcissist. He said, no, you're the narcissist. And then I was like, maybe I am. And again, I was Googling and watching things and I'm like, I don't think this is me. I think this is him. I think this is him.
Yes.
I don't think it's me, but I also look to see, am I a narcissist?
Yes. It literally makes you question your reality. Like it makes you actually feel crazy sometimes. And I remember thinking like he would tell me his version of a story that happened and I'm like, what? Like, I don't think that's what happened. But then I would be like, well, maybe it was. No, it wasn't.
Whenever when he was arrested the second time, he at the end of this whole abusive episode, I went upstairs to my stepson's bedroom to get the iPad that he didn't break so I could, ask for help. And he grabbed my head and he slammed it against the wall, and I got a concussion, broke my collarbone because I put my arm out to like brace myself. And I passed out. I just for a few seconds. And when I came to, he was calling everyone saying, she went insane. Help, help, help. Like putting it on me, right?
You went insane.
I went insane. Yeah. And I threw myself against the wall, broke my own collarbone, gave myself a concussion to make him look bad. Yeah. That makes sense, right? But I remember afterwards, a few months later, whenever we just talked about it, he had a whole different version of what happened that night. He's like, you were going up to my son's room to destroy his room, and I was defending my son in his room. His son wasn't even there, and I wasn't going up to destroy the room. I was going up to get the iPad to ask for help.
To get help.
But a totally made up, not based in reality.
It's ridiculous. And it's, I mean, that's not laughable at all. But like, in a sense, it's almost comical. Like, wow, you really live in that delusion. And it took a long time for me to come to terms with the fact that it's not that they are not like, it's not that they don't want to see reality. They literally are incapable of it. They are not capable of seeing reality. So when I wrap my mind around that, like, there's no point in explaining anything. He will never understand. It's the same thing like with my kids. He's in their lives 2 days a month. So it's like very intermittent, but he's not completely out, and which is more harm for them. But it's the same thing. It's very frustrating. He thinks he's like the stellar father and that he's present and he knows them so well, and he doesn't know them. He doesn't know his kids. And my kids are starting to see that.
I am lucky in that we didn't have kids together. My kids are with my other husband, and he's a very, very good dad. We co-parent well together. But if I would have to co-parent with him, I think that would just be the worst. And you're right. Like, it probably, I don't know your situation exactly, but I believe whenever you say it, it makes sense that it would probably be better if he wasn't in their life at all.
It 100% would. Yeah. I mean, they're so young. They're 6 and 3, and I will never speak poorly of him in front of them. I will never do that. Yes. But I'm letting them come to conclusions on their own. But it's really, really hard to be their safe space. And I mean, that's my role as a mom. That's fine. But it's hard to teach them how to navigate like the big feelings that they're feeling that they can't put words to, like they are already learning to walk on eggshells, and it's heartbreaking, very heartbreaking.
Kudos to you for not speaking ill about him in front of them, because knowing what I know about narcissists, he probably is not following that rule.
I know.
But I think that, so do you suspect any sort of him trying to do things like parental alienation?
No, I don't know what legal grounds he would have for that. I have the kids like 95% of the time. So it would be like, good luck with that. He did try to threaten me with that, like in the very beginning of our separation before we filed for divorce, because he's a veteran, and in his mind, he thinks like, veterans are the greatest and the law will always have their back. And I remember him saying, like, you will never see your kids. I'm going to take your kids away. And in my mind, I'm like, what? Like, you can do that because you're a veteran? Like, I was so manipulated into that. He can't even take him for the 2 days a month he has them, It was all a farce.
sometimes they'll try to turn the kids against the other parent. So I don't know, probably that's not going to happen because he sees them so infrequently,
right,
that he's probably not going to be able to do that. But I have interviewed people that have to co-parent with narcissists, and then they also experience parental alienation because the narcissist is feeding stuff to the kids that is not true and not based in reality about the other parent. And then the kids are also afraid to go against the narcissist because they see their wrath, and how bad it can be. And they're walking on eggshells. So that's a whole nother level that a lot of parents have to deal with.
It is. Yeah, that's a scary thing that I'm always going to have to navigate. And I remember, I don't even think I've ever told anyone this, but I remember before I ever got pregnant, I think we were married for maybe 4 years or something. And I was driving by myself, and I just like would go on drives just to think about everything. And I remember thinking, I feel like I don't love this person. I feel like this isn't love, but I feel like I cannot let him go. Like, I feel like I have to have him in my life. And I remember thinking like,
yes,
but I feel like I don't want him, but I need him. And I'm like, I wonder what would happen. Like, if we had a kid together, we would always be tied together. And I'm like, oh my God, Carissa. But I'm able to see now that was a trauma bond. That was codependency. And I didn't have a word for it. And I was like speaking the definition to myself,
I know that this person is bad for me. I know I don't want them in my life, but I do want them in my life. I don't know how to live without them. It's like, that is the addiction. That is the addiction, the trauma bond, the addiction. And so you just crave this person. You don't know how you would ever live without them. And yet, they're bad and harmful to you.
And I feel like they almost kind of like manipulate you into feeling that way. Like, you cannot live without them. Like, you are nothing without them. They have gotten you to where you are, which I never even got anywhere. But in my head, he was my safe space. And now I'm in a relationship with someone who's just so good. He's like an angel. I know, because I'm secure in myself now, like, I don't want to see my life without him. But if I needed to, I know that I would be okay. Whereas I did not know that back then. I literally thought that I would just crumble without him.
It's same. I'm in a very nice, stable relationship with someone that's, trustworthy. I feel safe. I feel secure with. And it's the same thing. It's like, I want him in my life, but I also know that if he wasn't in my life, I'm going to be okay.
Yes.
Where I did not feel that with my ex with narcissistic traits. I felt like I need this person because, like you said, I'm nothing without them. I can't function without them. I'm going to fall apart. And he would feed me things over the years. He would degrade me. You're so weird. You're so odd. I think you're autistic. I'm not. And it wouldn't matter if I was, but he would say it like as if it was a bad thing.
Yeah.
And then I remember he would also say, I'm the only person that knows you for who you really are and still loves you.
Wow.
That stuck in my mind that I'm this unlovable weirdo. And I better be so thankful that he puts up with me.
I remember being on a vacation, and it was actually like after our daughter was a few months old and then my son was 3, we drove down with the in-laws and we got a beach house and we were on the ocean. And that week was like the worst week of my entire existence. But it was also like the most needed week of my life, because that was when I made up my mind that I'm not doing this anymore. And in my head, I was like, I'm done with this marriage. I don't know how I'm going to be done yet. I don't have a plan, but I know I'm done. And it was like similar to you, the things that he was literally screaming in my face, like, I will never amount to anything. I will never get anyone nearly as good as him. He could get anyone else he wanted to. Terrible things.
Terrible.
And in my head, I'm like, is that true? I don't think that's true, but maybe it is. It sticks with you.
It does. Yeah. This is a little bit off topic, but did he have a strange relationship with his mother by chance? Did she defend him and protect him?
His family enables him. His mom is a wonderful person, but I think growing up, she felt like he was so far gone and he was going to do whatever he was going to do, and there was nothing they could do about it, that she kind of gave up. So she loves him because that's her son, but I don't think she likes what he does, but she enables it 100%.
In my situation, his mom thought that he could do no wrong, defended his actions. I mean, horrible actions she would defend and try to place the blame on me. He was sort of like the golden child growing up and just enabled his bad behavior so much.
Families don't know, like they don't realize that they're enabling. And I remember during my divorce process, thankfully he never laid his hands on me, but he came damn close, and things would be broken all the time, shattered, all that stuff. But in the divorce process, one day he came over to watch the kids, and I was leaving to go somewhere, and he chased me outside. And I remember thinking, oh my God, he's going to actually hit me. Like, he's really going to hit me right now. And he didn't. He had his fist clenched, and he was black eyes, but he did not. And I was like in disbelief, and his parents lived right across the street, and they watched the whole thing. And I called the cops, and my kids were in the house. Did they text and ask how the kids were? Did they text and ask how? Nothing. You know, it's like stuff like that is like, wow, really? Like I saw you guys as family, and like, look at what your son is doing.
And harming their grandchildren in the process. Even if they couldn't have some empathy and sympathy for you, which they should, can't you at least have it for your grandkids? And
exactly.
You said something really interesting, and I've had other people say this. The eyes would get black whenever he'd go into rage. What could you explain that?
My mom saw it our first few months of marriage. They came up to visit us, and she saw it. And I remember her sitting me down on the couch and saying, Carissa, his eyes are black. They're black. And she said, is he okay? Are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. You know, no one knew what was going on, but in my mind at that time, you know, I'm still very forgiving and like, no, it's okay. You know, he's just going through a hard time. And I didn't see it. My mom sees everything. My mom saw it periodically throughout the years, and I started seeing it after I gave birth to my daughter. And it was like piercing. There was nothing there. There was no life. It just was like piercing black eyes, just staring through you. Like there was nothing there except hatred. It was very scary. It was scary.
I wasn't that observant of it, but I think that so many people have told me about it. I know it's real. I don't know if their pupils are super dilated and that's what's going on, or if it's just that hollow, I don't care. I have no empathy, sympathy. I'm not really a real human with real emotions, except anger and rage and hate. Like that shines through. And while I didn't see like the eyes go dark as many people do, his face would change whenever he went from Jekyll to Hyde. It would change. And it was just scary, menacing, unloving.
Sometimes when that would hit with him, he would also be like, I think there's other mental health issues going on, but there would be like psychosis happening. Yeah. So they would be lifeless, but he also wasn't in reality. He would be like speaking in what sounded like a different language, or like just very scary. There were a lot of like layers to his personality. I think I learned to just, on top of the narcissism where you learn to walk on eggshells, I would learn that on top of like the psychosis that he would go in sometimes. It was like alcohol induced. And he would hallucinate and see like cults of children, or, you know, he would be taking a hammer and hitting things. Like it was very scary stuff. So a lot of people are like, well, why wouldn't you just run? And it's like, well, because there's fight, flight, or freeze. And I would freeze and I would fawn.
Yes.
And I would just act like I wasn't even there. I would be shaking on the couch with the kids. And it was terrifying. And that if he asked me something, I would just be as polite as I could and just pray that it would be over. You know, I would just pray he would go to sleep and that he would wake up and he would be okay.
No, that makes sense. And I wrote a blog on stupid questions people ask you. And one is, why didn't you just leave? Like all the layers, the kids, the family, you're trauma bonded to them. You might share finances, the house, the social stigma. There are a million reasons why victims don't just leave. It's not easy.
That is like the only question that I get that like gets me a little worked up. Like, really, you're going to ask that? Like, you clearly do not understand. You do not understand. And you don't unless you've lived it.
You did a video on speaking it out loud and how empowering that is. Could you share that a little bit with the audience?
I feel like manifestation is a thing, and when you think things for so long, it's so like deeply ingrained in you, but when you have the courage to speak on it, and whether it's just out loud in the bathroom to yourself, like that's how I started off. I would talk out loud to myself and say things, and I'm like, okay, I think I do have a right to feel the way that I do. And then you get the courage to like step by step tell your friends, and open up and be ready for feedback of like knowing that this isn't healthy. Like, I think the biggest part of it is just having the courage to open up and be vulnerable and hear from others that maybe have seen things, the truth about what you've been hiding from yourself.
It's healing for you, the individual who's gone through it, but it's also creating this community of care where we're saying this is legit what you went through. There's a real name for this. It's called narcissistic abuse. These are common tactics. You're not crazy or imagining it. And we're destigmatizing it by talking about it and saying it out loud.
Yeah, you're not crazy. You're allowed to be angry with yourself. You're not insane. Like, this is actually happening. Yeah, it's not okay.
And that's why I love your videos so much is, I have just become familiar with them I just got on, what is it, TikTok, where your videos are. Yeah, TikTok. I just got on that platform. I wasn't on it before, but, and now I'm unfortunately educated on narcissism, but they're still very helpful to me. And had I found those when I was in the relationship, it might have changed would have definitely educated me, and I might have left him sooner.
Yeah, thank you so much. That means a lot. Yeah, I'm glad that I can like get the word out there, and I've lived it and I understand it, and I can help other people, even if it's just one person. Like, I'm just happy to get the word out there.
It's so nice talking to you, and it's so eerie how similar our experiences were, even though we're dealing with totally different people.
Thank you so much. It was so nice talking to you.